Hello, everyone. Welcome to EyeRes's first advice session back. We took a little bit of a multiple year hiatus, but the role of EyeRes essentially is we invite ophthalmology educators to lead discussions on topics related to the application process. This session will be recorded in case anyone would like to refer to it, back to it at a later point. To introduce myself, my name is Daniel Cho. I am a fourth year medical student at the University of Missouri, and I will be one of the moderators for this session. And then I have three other members of our team here, Celeste, Justin, and Karen, who are our other moderators, and they can go ahead and introduce themselves as well.
Hi guys. So again, so excited for y'all to be here. My name is Celeste. I'm a third year medical student at Baylor College of Medicine.
Hi guys, I'm Justin. I'm also a third year medical student at the University of Maryland.
Hi, Dr. Lee. Hi, everyone. My name is Karen. I'm a second year medical student at Georgetown.
Great. Today's session will be geared for the current application cycle, and we'll be discussing a range of topics. Basically ranging from tips for the SF Match portal to signaling, as well as general interview advice. And the format for today's session will be the first 30 minutes we'll be asking questions submitted through our Google sign-up form that we sent out a few weeks ago. And then the last 30-ish minutes or so, we will open the floor up for a live Q&A portion. So just as a general rule of thumb, we ask that everyone wait to submit questions for the live portion. Submit them in the chat, but wait until about like 20 or 30-ish minutes have passed, just so in case your question gets answered, then you can think of a question that's based off of things we haven't discussed already. And then keep your mics muted, but you're welcome to turn your cameras on. This kind of makes it a more homey feel over the Zoom environment. And then with all of that said, I have the huge honor to announce our guest speaker today. His name is Dr. Aaron Lee. Dr. Lee is the newly appointed chair for the Department of Ophthalmology and Visual Sciences at the Washington University in St. Louis. He is a retinal surgeon in practice and also served on the faculty at the University of Washington in Seattle for about a decade prior to his move. Um, in addition to his outstanding clinical work, Dr. Lee is a pioneer in research, focusing on AI, deep learning, and large-scale model development, with some of his work including improving the capacity of AI to assess the severity of age-related macular degeneration. At a national level, he serves on the steering committee on information technology for AAO, which is helping integrate big data and AI concepts into the core curriculum of ophthalmology residency programs. He's widely known as a sought-after mentor among retina fellows, ophthalmology residents, graduate students, as well as medical students like ourselves, which is exactly why we reached out to him and why we are so grateful that he said yes. So virtually, please join me in welcoming Dr. Lee. Woo. Okay.
Uh,
Dr. Lee, I guess the first question that I have for you, before we get into questions regarding the application cycle is, what is your personal sort of story with why ophthalmology and how you got into this field to begin with?
Yeah, great question. And thanks so much for this opportunity. It's really wonderful to see, 40 medical students who are all interested in ophthalmology. Um, you're taking your time out on a Saturday evening to chat with me. So this is a great opportunity. I'm really honored to be here. To answer your question about why ophthalmology, I have a funny story behind that. I thought I was going to be a radiologist when I joined medical school because I was uh, really technically oriented. I was doing a lot of programming. And when you said computers in medicine, back when I was entering med school, that was really the field of radiology. I did a third year rotation in radiology and I hated it. It was so boring. And I thought, if I was going to end up living in a dark cubicle, I would have gone to go to work for a tech company and at least had sunlight in my cubicle. So I was pretty depressed. I thought I was going to drop out of med school. And then one of my friends suggested I should check out ophthalmology. And my initial response was kind of embarrassing. I said, I don't want prescribed glasses for the rest of my life. And and he said, that's not what ophthalmologists do. And he was an MD PhD student, had done his PhD in ophthalmology. He convinced me to do a rotation. I fell in love with it. There was just so much technology that was part of the field. There was you could deliver drugs and do surgery in a very confined space inside the human body and really understand it to a level that many other doctors and physicians can't in their subspecialties, right? So I look at nephrologists and they look at the inputs and outputs of the kidney and try to understand what's happening inside the kidney. They can't ever see inside the kidney, right? They only can see shadows of it on an ultrasound or a CT. Whereas in ophthalmology, we can look inside the eye, we can do surgery inside the eye, we can manipulate so much of the different structures inside of the eye. And so I fell in love with the field and ended up becoming a retina surgeon. So that's my story.
Yeah, that's great. And also, I think a testament to you can always switch paths when you think you come into medical school wanting to do something, but then finding a different passion halfway through. So, thank you for that. So, I think the first question we'll jump into, given the fact that we're sort of gearing up for this upcoming match cycle, from your perspective, what consistently distinguishes applicants who receive interview invitations, from those who do not?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really tough time. Right now, the people who are in this current cycle, hopefully you all are, you have hopefully taken your boards. You are writing your personal statement and agonizing over every word. You're trying to get your letters of recommendation. There are a lot of the core things have become sort of immutable by this point. And those things are really important, like your grades during your third year of medical school, your step two score. Now that step one has become pass fail, step two has become so important. And you unfortunately don't realize what your step two score is until very, very late, until like when you're about to hit the submit button for your ophthalmology application. And so you have no idea how competitive you are until that moment comes in. Um, for the interview stage, it's probably your step two score that matters quite a bit. Um, your letter writers are actually really matter quite a bit, a lot more than you might think. I think the the med students who go through the cycle often forget about what it's like from the other side. Imagine you're a program director at one of the ophthalmology residencies. You're getting 400, 500, 600 applications in a year. You have to somehow sift through that and figure out who you're going to invite. And there's very little movement that occurs after the invitations go out. And so, who you decide to invite in that first tranche of interview invites that go out are really critically important. And yet, you somehow have to distill like 600 plus applications to figure out who you're going to invite. And so, um, things that really will jump out from the page are going to be like the amount of research articles that the applicant has written. And it's ideally not just case reports or review articles, but actually research articles, and ideally ones that the student was first author in. And then secondly, the what the letter writers said about that applicant, particularly if that a letter writer has written letters of recommendation for five or six students in that cycle. The people reviewing the applications will read those letters extremely carefully when they're deciding who to invite for interviews. And so there's unfortunately nothing that is truly consistent. This is somewhat of a random process just because of the sheer number of applications that are coming through the door and the amount of human labor that's involved on the other side to review those and decide who you're going to interview.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of metrics that go into sort of like the initial process of getting an interview. But in regards to letters of recommendations, I know you briefly mentioned that one of the students that submitted a question regarding, from your opinion, what do you think carries more weight? Is it a letter of recommendation from a well-known writer with whom you might have more of a limited relationship with, or from someone who knows you really well but might be a little less prominent in the field?
Yeah. This is again one of those things where you agonize over because you have maybe three or four people that you sort of worked with. One might be a really well-known professor, but you maybe spent a half a day in their clinic and you barely got to say two words to them. Is it better to ask that person for a letter versus somebody that you worked really closely with, but they're an assistant professor? And not very well known. Um, I think it's good to have good to have both. It's very obvious when we're reading letters of recommendation who actually knew the applicant and who didn't. Um, and so it is really important to find somebody who knew you well and it can speak highly of you. Now the thing that I think was missing in the question is, in my opinion, you want to find somebody, even if they're assistant professor and not well known, if they've been writing a lot of letters of recommendation for other students, that actually carries quite a bit of weight. And if they've written, especially like I said before, if they in that particular cycle, if they wrote 5 letters that cycle and they said the nicest things and best things about you, that's going to carry quite a bit of weight.
Okay. Yeah. Good advice overall. And then I guess transitioning a little bit for the people who might just be entering medical school and sort of in the early stages of either trying to figure out a specialty or maybe they're interested in ophthalmology and wanting to set themselves up for the best success possible. What advice do you have for those people who might be MS1s, MS2s who are trying to build or a strong foundation to set themselves up for success in ophthalmology?
Yeah, well, I'm not biased at all when I say that ophthalmology is the best field of in medicine. It is, in my opinion, like it has the best parts of medicine, like outpatient medicine has the best parts of surgery without the insane call or the rounding that you have to do, or the inpatient care that comes along with a lot of the surgical subspecialties. So it really has like the best parts of medicine. I think if you're a first or second year medical student, it's good to kind of keep an open mind of why you might end up truly like becoming committed towards ophthalmology. So you want to be committed and you want to make the decision for the right reasons and not regret it later. Or your story of how you decided to become an ophthalmologist becomes a lot more compelling. My story. I did radiology research for the first 2 years. I didn't know what the field of ophthalmology was until my third year. Now, when I made that decision, one of the things that I did was I realized that my application was probably not competitive enough to match. And so I took a year off as soon as I realized that and did a year of research. And I fell in love with research actually during that year. I think it you don't need to walk in on the first day of medical school thinking that you're going to do ophthalmology and start doing research in ophthalmology. If you do that, sure, you'll have a longer track record. But it's also hard for people when you're being interviewed for that person to have a truly compelling reason for why they chose the field of ophthalmology, because the perception and understanding of what you believe to be true about the practice of medicine changes during your medical school education. And you don't really understand what it means to be a doctor until much, much later. You all are in medical school now. It's not until like you're an intern or resident that you start to understand what it means. And like frankly, it's not until you're a fellow and or you're starting your first job that you truly understand what this career path looks like. Um, it's kind of a shame in medicine that you have to make these gigantic decisions about your life with almost no information about what it means for each one of these steps, like med school to residency and then residency to subspecialty. Often you have to make those choices without ever having done one of those surgeries or ever having been in that position or understand what it's going to be like. So it is kind of a leap of faith that you have to make at each step along the way. But going back to your question, I think it's really important for first and second year med students to keep an open mind, focus on uh, doing well and understanding yourself as a learner, like how you learn the best, is really important during medical school because when you get to residency, you have a very compressed period of time to learn and to take care of people. And so it's you really have to figure out during your 4 or 5 years of medical school how you learn the best.
Yeah, I think that's awesome advice. Was also something that I got told when I first entered medical school was to build good habits early, because your first couple of years are essentially foundational for the rest of your career, essentially. So yeah, I think that's great advice. And I think in the future we'll have some more advice sessions more catered towards those M1s and M2s who are just getting interested in the field. So that can be something for the crowd to be looking out for in the future. And then in regards to research, I know you've done a lot of work in research, and what would you say, how does research play a role in the competitiveness of an applicant? Is it a numbers thing? Is it a quality over quantity thing? If you could provide your perspective on that.
Yeah, no, I happy to. So I feel like we're sort of experiencing a race to the bottom, right? So step one has become pass fail. Medical school curriculums have become pass fail. Some of them are pass fail all the way through. Some of them are pass fail, for the first 2 years, but then you get, high pass honors, etc. During your third year rotations. Unfortunately, all of that, what that means is that research has become a really important part of the ophthalmology application. And so now we see the majority of applicants taking a year off to do research before applying. Uh, I have sort of mixed feelings about that. I don't think it's awesome to have medical students who have like no interest in doing research long term, doing research just to pad their applications to be competitive to go into ophthalmology. That's not helpful for anybody. It's not helpful for that student. It's not helpful for the mentor who's trying to help that student. It's not helpful for the field. So I would love, personally, I would love for step one to be scored again, but I don't know if that's ever going to happen. But it would really take, the medical students advocating for that, for that to change again. Um, I think it's very important to be involved in research projects deeply. It doesn't matter, if it's a lot or a few, but you should be able to talk about your involvement in a research project very deeply. So if you list something on your application, you should be able to talk about it with some depth. I can't count the number of times that I was interviewing folks and I would ask something about their research project that caught my eye. And within a few questions, the answer became, I didn't really do that much for that research project, so I don't really know. I can't really answer that question. And so that's very disappointing to hear because it basically makes me wonder about the rest of the application. Like, how much of the rest of this is sort of fluff to make the application look really good, and there's not actual depth to the rest of it. I would highly encourage all of you, if you put something down on your application, you should be able to talk about it, and you should know it really, really well. And you should not be surprised when somebody starts asking you to some questions that are related to that project.
Yeah, so you were sort of touching on the idea of how when you're asked questions, you should be able to substantiate whatever you put on the application. So I think that's a good time for us to talk a little bit about the interview process a little bit. What general tips do you have for interviewing for ophthalmology applicants? Are there any specific questions that you think we should be prepared to answer? And whatever other takes you have on that.
Yeah, I have a whole list. On the Discord server where the application that for that particular season the applicants are active on. This past cycle was the first cycle that I was really on there and engaged. I made a really long bulleted list of tips I have for applicants. Uh, Everything matters, right? Like it's a shame in some ways that it's not in person because you get to applicants would get to actually see the institution. They would get to see the city that they're going to be living in. But then for us, like it's really great to be able to actually see the other person, not inside of a little Zoom square, but actually like get to meet them, shake their hand, and have a chat with them. Um, we've lost a lot of that, and I understand the reasons behind it. It was very expensive when I was going through to do all those flights and hotels and all of that. I understand the reasoning behind it, but it actually has harmed some a certain percentage of the applicants because they can't shine very well when it's in the Zoom format. They don't interview well when it's through a webcam. And those students end up not matching when they otherwise were probably amazing ophthalmology residents. They would have been gone on to be great ophthalmologists. And so it's a problem, and you as an applicant can do things to kind of stack the deck in your favor to do well on that day. Um, how you set up the camera, how you have your AV or your audio and your microphone, you need every word that you say needs to be very clear to the interviewer. You can't have, kind of a crappy microphone or have any issues of your AV on that day because it makes the interview really frustrating for the interviewer. Um, and then, like I would go even so far as to say, like, just be mindful of what's in your background in your camera when you're interviewing too, because it says something about you in a way, like you've chosen to position yourself in that particular place with that kind of background behind you. So all of that is nonverbal communication that is occurring at the time of your interview. And it's within milliseconds that it sets some sort of impression about you to that interviewer. You really need to think about that very, very carefully. And you need to practice. It's very important, and I think in my mind, to have med students practice with one another. Like you should find friends. Um, it doesn't need to be in ophthalmology. You could, if you're worried about like, competing with one another, fine. Go ask your roommates, go ask your med school friends who are going into other subspecialties. Ask them to interview with you over Zoom. Do it exactly the way that you would do it when you go on that day and ask for feedback. Like, was it very clear? Could you hear everything that I was saying? I think that that's really important to do. I often find that the students that are most baffled by this whole process are the ones who unfortunately didn't interview well. And it's hard for when they didn't match, when they go back to get feedback, it's hard for the program directors to tell them, you just didn't interview well. Like it is, they usually like say it in some other way, like there was nothing really wrong with your application, you just sort of fell through the cracks. Like in my mind, that's a sign that if you made it to the interview, you meant that your application was strong enough to get it through that your foot through the door. You fell short during the interview somehow compared to everybody else that was interviewed that day. You didn't leave a strong impression. You were sort of just kind of average. The thing that really hurts applicants as the interview season goes on is that they sound robotic towards the middle or late part of the interview season. They've heard this question so many times and they've given the same answer so many times that they sound disinterested when they're giving the answer. And it makes it sound for the interviewers, it makes them think, oh, this guy's not really that interested in our program. They're not. They're just like, going through the motions. They just want to be able to rank us on the rank list so that they have a higher chance of matching into ophthalmology. But this person is not actually truly interested in coming to our program. So it's one of the hardest things to do, but it's very important to keep your energy level up, to think very carefully about how you're communicating, even when you're not saying anything to the during the interview. You only have like 10 minutes with each interviewer, right? It's a very short period of time to leave an impression that's going to be positive and that's going to help you.
Wow, yeah, I think you gave a lot of great pearls in that. I think talking about the nonverbals is really important as well, with how the background's sort of set up. And I guess I never personally thought about how with all those repetitions you might start sounding a little bit more robotic in a sense over time. So I think that's a good perspective for not only me who's about to enter the application cycle, but I think for all of us who are participating in this call to just be mindful of. So thank you for that answer. Um, Sort of transitioning a little bit, the recent changes with SF Match increased the number of signals, I believe from 10 to 15. And so, what's your take on how applicants should utilize those signals effectively?
Yeah, I think this was the most asked question on Discord in the last month or so. In my opinion, the we haven't figured out the Nash equilibrium around this, right? So the programs don't understand how to understand somebody signaling them because AUPO and SF match has been changing the number of signals every year. And so whatever, prior knowledge that they had that they could utilize to make decisions, like all of that sort of goes out the window every single time that is changed. And so I'm honestly not sure that signals matter a whole bunch. The advice that I've been giving is that you should just sort of make sure you signal broadly. Don't use all your signals for all the top programs in the country, and then don't signal anywhere else. I would signal, some at your top choices, some in your middle, and some on a little bit lower down, so that you can kind of broadly kind of send your signals out. That, in my opinion, would probably help more than sending all your signals to the top programs. If everybody uses the same heuristic to use the signals, then basically all this top 10 programs are going to get all the signals, and those programs will learn absolutely nothing about the applicants, and everybody else will know, your applicants will have used up all their signals and they would gain absolutely nothing, right? And so it doesn't help if you just go down the rank list of Doximity or US News World Report and just go 1 through 10 or 1 through 15 and just send all your signals there. That's not going to help you. That's not going to help anyone else. So I think it's better if you spread out your signals a bit. But to be honest, I think the number one frustration I heard from this past cycle on Discord was, there was some bitterness about using a signal for a program, and not matching there. I think that's the wrong way to think about it. In my opinion, the signals will help you get to the interview stage. Once you get to the interview stage, it's a level playing field for everybody who's interviewing. You shouldn't think that you have some extra brownie points because you used a signal to that program. You use the signal to get an interview. The interview then sets a level playing field. If you don't match at all, it's because of something that happened, in my opinion, during the interview stage, if you got enough interviews. If you didn't get enough interviews, that means that your application was weak compared to your peers, and that you failed that first sort of step. So I think that people put too much weight into the signals. I would not agonize over it as much as you think or you may be doing right now. Throughout this entire process, it's the illusion of choice that keeps everybody up at night. But it truly is an illusion.
And I just wanted to quickly interject for the rest of the Zoom call. You guys are welcome to start entering questions into the chat as you guys see fit. If we don't get any, we have plenty of other pre-submitted questions that we can keep talking through. So feel free to start going ahead into the chat and we'll start collecting those questions in a little bit. But Dr. Lee, before we get into that portion, I think the last question that I had was, given your passion for research, and I know you spend a lot of time doing work with AI, how do you think that might, or given the role that AI is sort of having in the status quo, how do you think that'll change what programs are looking for in applicants, if at all, or like what even residents might need to learn during their training?
Yeah. Look, I'm happy to tackle that. It's a really hot topic right now. Everybody's talking about how AI is going to transform medical education, medical everything that you learned during medical school, as well as, how we train residents and fellows. It's going to transform everything and we know it. I think the students know it. But we don't understand what it means to, train somebody in that way when they'll have readily access to these tools for the rest of their lives. There are certain parts of medicine that we never use anymore because the technology became obsolete. And there could be things that we take as gospel today and dogma that we abandon because AI can supplant it. So I think there's a great deal of fear of change, and I think in this group's lifetime, or even in the next couple of years, you will be very likely the guinea pigs to kind of go through this revolution. It will. I hope that actually you see it as something that is really exciting. You are setting the next chapter of how medical education will occur uh, in light of this new technology, right? And so your the decisions and the impressions that you make, the way that we guide the field in the coming years will have a profound impact for decades to come. In terms of the application cycle, I would be really surprised if AI is not being used by the applicants when you're writing your personal statements and structuring, the free text parts of the SF Match application. I'd be shocked if you guys aren't using it. And you should probably not be shocked if the programs are starting to use these AI tools to try and digest all the applications that are coming in through the door. Um, it's a problem where it's very hard to find enough faculty members that can look at the applications with the care and time that they need to do that part of the review of applications well. And so I wouldn't be surprised if programs are starting to do that. In fact, when I arrived here at WashU, that was one of the things that we started to look at was how do we use these large language models in a way that we can distill applications down and more accurately help humans who are doing this task do it more proficiently.
Great. Yeah, thank you for your perspective on that. Seems like we got a few questions that are coming in the chat, and just for the sake of time, I think we'll transition to the live Q&A portion, which some of the other members of our team will start handling. So thank you, Dr. Lee.
Yeah, thank you again, Dr. Lee, for taking the time to talk to us about all your expert advice. And in talking about being the guinea pigs in the future as future residents and as med students who are rotating or finishing up away rotations, we did have a question in the chat that asked, in your opinion, are there any things that you've seen that make certain applicants more successful during residency in regards to personality traits, attributes, any qualities that you look out for maybe in interviews or on these away rotations?
Yeah, great question. So, there's a two-part answer to that. So the first part is that, in my opinion, I'll give my perspective. My opinion, I love to see applicants who are self-directed learners, that are able to figure out where they're deficient in and are motivated enough to try and fill those deficiencies, and try to take pride in what they do, and try to become better on their own without somebody trying to needing to shame them in some way or pimp them in some way. Like I feel like that era of medicine has gone. What we sort of need in the next generation are learners who are motivated to learn on their own and are not looking to be spoon-fed information. Um, the other part of your question about what people are looking for on a ways, one of the advices that I always give every year, even when I was sort of doing these interviews for applicants as a faculty member at University of Washington, is that the thing that differentiates all the programs from one another is not the number of cataracts that they do, or the geographic location they're in, or all of those things. It's actually something that's not emphasized at all. And the thing that differentiates them the most, in my opinion, is their teaching philosophy. Each one of these programs has come to some conclusion about what the best way to teach a resident is. And and that can span the spectrum of, you throw them into the clinics, there's no supervision. They are learning by doing, and they're learning by seeing a lot of pathology, seeing a lot of patients, and they have residents sort of supervising each other, even in the OR. There are programs like that who truly believe there's nothing wrong with that model, and that is the best way to train an ophthalmology resident. The other end of the spectrum are programs that believe there should be a lot of hands-on learning, much more structured learning, I'm sorry, where there's didactics. You shadow with them in the attending clinics all 3 years. There may not be a resident clinic, there might not be a VA, and they think that's okay, and that is actually a good thing because they follow the more apprenticeship type model where the resident is with the attendings in their clinic and in their OR, and they're very, very, very supervised. And so you have this continuum of programs that fall somewhere in between. It's very important as a potential resident in those programs to understand that program's teaching philosophy, and conversely, how you learn best as a learner. Did you learn the best during your medical school, during your third year rotations, when you saw some patient and you never forgot that patient for the rest of your life? Or did you learn the best during your first 2 years when you could read the books, and you remembered all of that and you could instantly apply that in the future? You need to match how you learn to how the residencies believe is the right way to teach. And you need to find that match during the interview season. Uh, the reason why I'm telling you all of this is because I've seen residents who've really struggled, um, who who were great on paper, who interviewed really well. Everybody was so excited to have them in the program, and then they really struggled during residency. And it's nothing to do with that person. It's actually because of this mismatch of how they learned up until that point in their life. They could choose how they learned. When you got to residency, you can't choose how you learn. You have to fit the mold of how that program believes is the best way to teach because all the infrastructure is set up in that way. And so that's where I see the greatest difference. And so it's really important while you're going through this process to first understand how you learn the best, and then second, how the different programs believe is the best way to teach residents.
Thank you so much for that advice. I feel like that's such a unique perspective that doesn't get talked about enough whenever we're looking at residencies that we're interested in, or even during away rotations. That's a perfect like time to go and see how the residency operates as well. So thank you for that.
All right. Hi, Dr. Lee. Thank you so much for answering our questions today. We have a couple questions regarding the research year, and I know you said that you did do a research year. And so, as someone who has gone through that experience, we're wondering kind of what factors should a student look into if they're planning whether or not to take a research year? And also for students that have taken their research year already, like how does that affect the way that they're viewed by programs when their application is being looked at?
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned before, I do think that the norm is becoming having done a research year. So it's a unfortunate race to the bottom that we're seeing where we see that phenomenon. But it is becoming a more and more important part of the ophthalmology application. And so if you're looking at places to do your research year in the labs that you work with, it's pretty important to sort of see, how is that person that mentor that you're working with, how has that mentor-mentee relationship been with past people who have gone through that lab? Um, I just as an example for myself, I as a rule will only take one medical student at a time because I can't devote enough time and attention to having more than one medical student who is spending a year of research in my lab. Um, if I had opened the door, I could very easily have 10 a year, but I wouldn't be able to do, the amount, the spend all the effort and the time and attention that those 10 people need. And so I purposely will limit it to one a year for that reason. And then when I'm writing my letters of recommendation, I can be as effusive as I want because I have one med student a cycle that I really want to help them with their careers. Um, so I think it's really important to look at the, past track record. Obviously, trying to get your involved in as many research papers as possible is important, but they have to be, like I said before, they have to be meaningful contributions. They can't just be, oh, well, I helped with the lit review with that. I didn't really understand what the results were. Or I might have done like, the chart review for this. I extracted all the data into Excel, but I wasn't really part of like, how the rest of the paper kind of came to be. Those kind of answers are not gonna do you favors. So it's this is why it's like a two-pass phenomenon, right? Like, yes, they will get you through the first part of the phase to get lots of interviews, but then during the interview phase, you'll suffer because you've padded your application with things that will help you look good on paper, but then sort of fall flat when you get to the interviews part.
Got it. Thank you so much.
I can ask the next question. So thank you so much, Dr. Lee, for sharing all your insights. And I see some questions on attending conferences. So for M1s, M2s who started getting involved in more research and attending more conferences, in your perspective, how important is attending ophthalmology conferences? And then what advice do you have for making the most of those opportunities?
I'm gonna be possibly a little controversial and say that it doesn't help you at all. It doesn't help you for the purposes of getting into ophthalmology. Okay, so like if your goal of going to a conference is to somehow magically network with program directors who are going to remember your name and pull out your SF Match application and put it to the top of the stack because they had such a great conversation with you at AAO, that, to my knowledge, never happens. Or if it happens, it happens so rarely that it's probably not worth thinking about or trying to game your way into that. Um, I think that the ophthalmology conferences are amazing places to learn and amazing places to understand the breadth and scope of ophthalmology as a field. And if you're going to a conference like ARVO, you really get to understand what the entire field of vision science is thinking at the moment. whether that's in adaptive optics or in OCT or in big data or AI or in any of the amazing basic science programs that are going on right now with stem cell regeneration and RPE and all this stuff. So there's amazing things happening right now. It's very exciting times. But if you're going to the conference with the hopes of it somehow helping your ophthalmology application, it's probably not going to help. Now, if you get a podium talk accepted, that's a different story because a conference paper or a podium talk has the same level of prestige as a peer review publication. And so if you get a podium talk accepted, then I would absolutely go to that and give that talk. Now, if it's to some small state conference, that's probably not as meaningful as a national or international level conference.
Thank you so much.
And this will be our final question, Dr. Lee, for tonight. A few students were kind of wanting to go back to the application process and talking about your expertise in AI, looking at the trajectory of LLMs in residency application process. Do you anticipate their role trending towards initial screening, filtering, or towards facilitating comprehensive holistic reviews? And in conjunction with that, I also kind of wanted to add on your perspective on just the role outside of research of your extracurriculars, how you're doing on away rotations, that narrative evaluation that you get from electives and narrative or away rotations as
Yeah, I think that language models are going, if not already, being used for all parts of that. You know, when I think about the riskiest, most dangerous way to use a language model for the application cycle, it would be, well, there's no humans looking at the applications at all. We're just going to feed them all to, ChatGPT or to Claude, and we'll just have it give us the rank list, and we won't even bother to look at it. That would be like one extreme. I'm fairly certain there's nobody out there doing that. Um, there are other ex stages that people think about is like, well, could we use this as a pre-filtering step so that we can spend when we ask the human reviewers, the clinicians and the faculty members to spend more time on these high yield applications rather than all the applications that they were traditionally asked to review. That still, in my opinion, is a little bit dangerous because you don't know what you're missing by taking that approach. The approach that I'm thinking about doing at WashU is to help the human review reintegrate back. And so, what I mean by that is that let's say that you have reviewer A and reviewer B. They come up with some rank lists of the applications that they reviewed. When you go to try and merge those two lists together, it's not always clear how to merge it together in a consistent way. You can't just mash them together, right? Because the middle of one rank list and the other could be very, very different. And so one of the things that we've applications that we've thought about is to use AI as a integrating ruler, so that when you go, you keep the rank list consistent, but you at least use AI to try and merge the rank lists together when you're getting them back from the faculty. So that's something that we've been thinking about at WashU as a way to use AI safely and more effectively without harming applicants along the way.
Great. Well, I think we're sort of nearing the end of our time, and I want to be respectful of your time, Dr. Lee, and also everyone else who's here on a Saturday night. I think we want to close off this session by letting you have an opportunity to sort of plug Wash U, talk about, I know you mentioned like the teaching philosophy of different programs. If you could share a little bit about what you think Wash U's specific teaching philosophy is, and what other pros or cons, whatever you want to discuss about the program itself.
Yeah, so thanks for that opportunity. I've generally tried to give answers that are fair and broad and not really specific to making our program look good. Every time I give this advice about teaching philosophy and learning style, inevitably the question I get asked next is, well, what about your program? I think it's a little unfair, honestly, for me to answer that question. And you should do the same kind of homework that you do when you're evaluating programs A, B, and C that you do to WashU, right? Like I don't think you should take the words that anybody tells you when they say that our teaching philosophy is X. That's not what you should ask when you go to these programs. You should really be asking like, do you have a resident clinic? Do you have a VA clinic? Like, how are the residents supervised in different parts of their learning? What kind of didactics do you have? Like asking those kinds of questions will give you an inventory of their educational portfolio, and it'll be very clear very quickly what kind of teaching philosophy they actually have. And so I'm not gonna plug WashU in particular right now. I will say though that like I am very, very active on Discord. And so there's a lot of questions I see here that I unfortunately didn't have the chance to answer. I'm very happy to answer them on Discord, or you can email me directly. I think the advantage of Discord is that I have no idea who you are. So there's no possible way that it can influence your application. And I think it's amazing that there's a safe space like that that's available for you all. Because you don't get to see each other during the interview trail. You don't get to commiserate together. You don't have a way of sharing information outside of that. And so I think it's a fantastic tool that I hope all of you will take advantage of. I put myself out there by putting my name behind my handle. And so but I did that so that hopefully people would feel like they could approach and ask questions and feel that I could be a arbiter of what actually happens during the interview cycle.
Yeah, thank you for that. As someone who's been lurking in the Discord channel, I think it's a very rare, but also a really awesome opportunity that we as students have to have someone like you that's so responsive and just so willing to help this next generation essentially. So for anyone in the chat, I know we have a lot of people who found out about this session through the Discord channel, but if you're interested and not a part of it, you can reach out to any of us on the EyeRes team, or you can also like easily just like Google like ophthalmology Discord channel, Reddit, and it should be like one of the first links that pop up. So highly recommended. There's a lot of great wisdom, not only from Dr. Lee, but also current residents or like graduated residents who are just so willing to give back to the community. And so there's just a fund of knowledge in there that I think is a great place to take advantage of. Um, so yeah, Dr. Lee, that's the end of our time together. I don't know if you had any other sort of lasting comments you wanted to make to the group.
Yeah, I would just say that I'm really excited to see this be rebooted. This is a really awesome initiative. Thank you to the organizers for putting it together. I love seeing student-driven initiatives like this. It's really very exciting to see, and it gives a level of vibrance that has been missing. So it's really great to see you guys do this. Thank you for the hard work in putting it together. And I hope you do lots of this moving forward.
Yeah, that's the plan. And so we're really honored that you could be the first to sort of kickstart things back off for us. Before we close, I think Justin's going to share a little bit of a quick slide for the rest of the group. It's just got like a QR code, and that QR code will take you to our next advice session. Sorry, once it loads up. So we already have our next advice session scheduled. It's with Dr. Chada from the Icahn School of Medicine. That'll be on September 16th at 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And she'll be talking a little bit more specifically on assessing program fit and how you might navigate whatever connections you end up building throughout your 4 years of medical school. So that'll be our next talk. And that sign up sheet will also have links to our social media pages. So shameless plug to follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, whatever you all are active on. So keep an eye out for our next advice sessions coming up and everything else that we've got in the works behind the scenes. So everyone's good to head out of here. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Lee.